Welcome back, everyone, to another fantastic episode of Double Book. Tonight's guest is someone who lives at the intersection of imagination and innovation, a storyteller who understands that curiosity doesn't just build machines, it builds meaning. He's an engineer with over 100 patents to his name, and the mind behind The Engineer, The Dark Heart of Redemption, and now his newest work, Artifacts and Enigmas. Please join me and welcome the author who proves that science and stories can share the same heartbeat. Welcome, Darran Handshaw. How are you doing, my friend?
Hello. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Josh. And what wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So glad you're here. We were talking off the before we jumped on the live. I was fanboying. I think that's the right word, fanboying over your book. I had too much fun with it, and I want to go through and give you the opportunity to go through and tell everyone. Just give a quick elevator pitch on your book. But we have some amazing friends on that just jumped on. I got to go through and say hi real quick.
Mhm.
We have a fantastic author. Hello, Ellen Holmes. Appreciate you being here, my friend. And then we have a celebrity here, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. How's it going, Mark? And then the great and powerful Mike Molman. How are you
Oh,
doing?
cool.
Appreciate all of you being here. So Darran, yeah, quick elevator pitch for Artifacts and Enigmas for those who have not read your book yet.
Okay, so Artifacts and Enigmas, it's a collection of short stories about sci-fi tech mysteries, right? And it's kind of, if I was to sum it up very quickly, it's MacGyver meets Sherlock Holmes, right? So Actaeon is MacGyver. Some people will recognize him from my previous novels. Aethelgard is a new character. He's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes night investigator. So together, it's Actaeon with the engineering talent and Aethelgard with the investigative talent, and they're looking to solve tech mysteries. So Aethelgard will pull Actaeon in when he needs help with the tech aspect of it. So, um, they're kind of buddies. They get to know each other along these stories and really grow their relationship and learn to work with each other's different styles as things progress. And they are really, I wrote them as standalone short stories, so you could read them separately. You could read them one at a time, read one, read a different novel, read another one, So I wanted to create something that was not really a novel. I wanted to create something that was more episodic that people could get into without fully committing to a really big book, which my previous two books are huge. So that said, if you want, I could read an excerpt.
Yeah, let's
Quickly.
go for it. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So this is from the Tubeway murders, which is later in the book. So basically, Actaeon is working with a bunch of engineers that he's been training, and they're trying to rebuild a vehicle that is underneath pyramids. So to give a little bit of background on Redemption, where it takes place, it is a ruined futuristic city. So imagine a futuristic metropolis like New York City 500 years from now, assuming everything stays stable and we keep advancing technology and there's lots of great technological advancements, and then imagine disaster strikes. So in the world of Redemption, takes place in that city. It has fallen, and there are people called the Ancients that had disappeared without a trace from the city. Nobody knows what happened to them. That's a big mystery. And basically, about 100 years before all the stories begin, portals open up and dump out people with like more of a medieval understanding of the technology. So Actaeon and Aethelgard included are now in this kind of post-apocalyptic ruin where civilizations have started to crop up again, and they're trying to solve mysteries centered around the pyramid, which is right behind them here, which is the neutral center of Redemption. So there's a lot of different divisions. They're called dominions. They're kind of like different countries that crop up around the city in different sections of it. And in the pyramid, that's like the place that they can all meet together and, basically hash out trade agreements and, come up with, negotiations and things like that, and they don't have to worry about who's in control of the territory. The arbiters actually protect the neutrality there because they see the value in having a neutral place to meet for the furtherance of civilization, right? So Aethelgard's part of the arbiters, and he's a knight investigator. So he investigates crimes around that area. So the two-way murders, just to set that up really quick, that's a story that follows Actaeon and his team of engineers, and they're trying to fix kind of like a futuristic, almost subway car in the tubeways underneath the ruins. So without further ado, so a few people are out in the tunnels trying to clear a disturbance when this starts. So and they're finished and they're going to get back on the car. So Lauren tapped a few symbols on the console to bring up the projection showing the slug's entry room. She watched carefully as first Velissa, who paused to check the console, then Japhas, and finally Nymeth, climbed up through the hatch and entered the transport craft. When Nymeth boarded, the open hatch alert symbol disappeared, which, according to Darban, indicated it was closed. Lauren thought of the symbols in just those simple terms that the lost man had explained to her. Any deeper thought about them would start her head pounding with pain. All confirmed aboard and ready to depart, she reported. Very good, said Actaeon. Take us forward. The map projection shows a roundabout just ahead. If we can make it, let us turn about. The metal slug advanced cautiously as Lauren urged it forward. She didn't need to make the same mistake of striking debris again. With one eye on the proximity sensors, she kept the craft moving forward at a crawl. While she directed it, Velissa and Nymeth returned to their consoles behind her. Everything looks clear ahead, confirmed Velissa, after surveying the projection above her console. All systems operating within acceptable parameters, added Nymeth, as he scrutinized the information coming from his. They continued forward at a crawl until they reached the roundabout. Lauren directed the slug into it and made the quick loop around until they were in the main tubeway again and facing back toward the pyramid. Now the way ahead was known. She tapped the symbol for speed and nudged it forward. The tubeway began to zoom past around the perimeter of the bubble window. The speed increased until all the imperfections of the tunnel were but a blur to their vision. The luminaries affixed to the front of the craft lit up a space just in front of them as they zipped along. The spinning mechanism in the drive room somehow keeping the slug floating in the center of the tubeway. Coming up on the hazard we just repaired, said Namath, in 4, 3, 2. He never got the chance to reach 1. The proximity alarm blared. Ahead in the beam of the luminaries, a running figure came into view. At the last moment, they all recognized Japhas, running right toward them. The blacksmith slid to a stop, and his jaw dropped open as the metal slug slammed into him and obliterated his body in a spray of red that splattered across the elderglass bubble. Lauren slammed her fist on the emergency brake symbol, and the engine screamed behind them as it tried to stop the vehicle as quickly as possible. But it was too late. Japhas was gone. The realization dawned on them all. Lauren let out a horrified scream. By the fallen, I've killed him. She fell to her knees beside the console and vomited. Velissa rushed forward to take her place at the main console and made sure everything was shut down. Lauren slapped both hands against her forehead. Gods, what have I done? Then in the next scene, he had it coming, said Darban. He was normally in a sort of mental fugue himself, but this time he broke them all out of their shock with his unexpected words. Actaeon blinked as his senses returned after seeing the man explode on the front of the transport craft. Yunel, I need you to go to Pyramid on foot. Find Night Investigator Aethelgard and tell him what happened here. Aye, aye, your grace, said Yunel. But what exactly should I tell him? There has been a murder, said Actaeon, and we need him to determine who is the killer. Lauren looked at him and her face blanched as she realized the implications of what he was saying. It shall be done, said Yunel, and she was off. She squeezed past the bulk of the two-way vessel, and they all watched her run forward in the luminary light, leaving bloody footprints in her wake.
That brought back so much memories of that book. So good, man. So
yeah,
good.
That was an unusual one because Actaeon was at the scene of the murder, right? So.
Yeah.
little different.
Have you thought about doing the narration for it, like doing an audiobook for it?
I've thought about doing that kind of with all my books. I I I think I would enjoy that, but I have so much limited time to write. Like I have so little time with everything that I do that I feel like it would cut into my writing schedule. So one of the things I've thought about is maybe I record one short story and just put it up on YouTube and just see how it does. And then if I feel like doing another one a few months later, I do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's something I might do.
I feel like this book's perfect because how it's
Yeah.
set up. So you can literally go through and be like, "Hey, here's the first story," and see if it gets interest, and then progressively go through and get the whole story out there.
Yep. So that's something I probably will do at some point.
Yeah, awesome. I think you would do great. I think it'd be awesome. I think it
Thanks.
would be awesome. So I would like to start with. I would like to go back a little bit to the beginning. When did storytelling first grab hold of you? Was writing something you always knew you wanted to do, or did it sneak up on you later on in life?
It's something I kind of on and off always knew, like I always enjoyed doing. I wrote stories since I was a kid. I never really finished anything that was novel worthy. I started writing novels that I thought um, would be kind of great ideas and kind of lost interest over the years, right? And then the first story that really hit me that I have to write this, and I don't have a choice but to finish it, is The Engineer, which is it's actually a real story of how I met my wife, and she created the game world of Redemption. It was a text-based role-playing game, and um, the story of how Actaeon, who's my character on her game, met her character Cassandra was just so epic and awesome. And it was before I married her, right? We got to know each other through that story, um, but it was just such an epic story that I had to write it. So I spent the time writing The Engineer, and it took 3 years of regularly writing once a week and finding that time to do that. And I finally got The Engineer done. So that was really the first impetus for me to really say, hey, I have to publish a novel. I have to finish a novel.
That's that's awesome. That's awesome. So you said you've always been in the writing. It's just nothing that like the stories never went through and stuck with you. Were like, hey, I have to go through and finish this. Were
Right.
there any when you were growing up? Was there any like specific authors or maybe even just a specific book that made you fall in love with storytelling, or to maybe shape how you approach writing your types of stories?
I guess I always liked being a storyteller, like verbally. So
Mhm.
I grew up as I was younger in the fire service, and as a volunteer firefighter, still am. And I spent a lot of time like there. We go on a lot of crazy calls and weird calls, and there's a lot of that in the fire services, like sitting around and sharing those stories with each other, and
Mhm.
telling old stories. And I found I really enjoyed listening to those from the old timers, and then also telling my own as I got them. So I think that to me kind of cemented the fact that I like to be a storyteller, and then kind of getting back to my roots of writing down fictional stories, and wanting to tell those was the next step.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and even the text-based role-playing games, I mean, it was a lot of collaborative storytelling, right? Like we were
Mhm.
writing what our characters did in each scene. So everybody would take a turn writing several paragraphs about what their characters were doing next.
That's that's so cool. I've never gone through and done that. I don't have the writing skills to go through. It would be everyone would be writing something epic, and then mine would be
Yeah.
very illiterate on what my person did. So it would have. I don't know if I could handle
Well,
doing it personally.
that's part of the reason, like spending many hours playing those games really honed my writing ability and allowed me to um, be a better writer, get more to the point, and be more interesting with what I did. Because there are many scenes in those games where people are just hanging out at a tavern, right, and
Mhm.
just uh, nothing too interesting, right? So, but
Mhm.
it's really being able to craft a more epic story is something that takes a lot of learning, right,
Yeah.
and practice.
So at the beginning of the story, you went through and dedicated your book to Ed Barkin.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to go through and tell us a little bit about Ed. I have a picture
Yeah.
up here if we want to go through and
Yep.
talk a little bit
So
about.
so yeah, I actually dedicated it to Ed before he passed. He unfortunately passed away Halloween this year. Um, and I showed it to him um before I dedicated it to him. So Ed is really a phenomenal individual. He actually invented the handheld laser barcode scanner back in the late 70s. He invented it, right? So all the handheld barcode scanners and stuff like that were his invention. Like he started that whole field, and everything that you see in like inventory management and in the supermarket, people scanning things like that was all Ed invented that. So you introduced me very kindly that I had 100 patents. Well, Ed has, I think before when all of his patents finish issuing, he'll have over 1,000.
Yes.
But he's close to that. So he's like up there with genius with like somebody like Nikola Tesla or somebody like that, where he just continually invents things. It's just such an innovation. I was blessed to be able to work with him for directly for the past 10 years very closely. So spending 8 hours a day just brainstorming new concepts and ideas. And before that, I had known him for another 2 decades. And just a really awesome, humble guy. You would never know that he did all that meeting him on the street. But that said, he was a huge science fiction fan, so we'd recommend different science fiction books to each other, and he loved like the classic sci-fi stories from like the golden age of science fiction, like Arthur C. Clarke, Heinlein, Larry Niven, just all sorts of different authors that he gave me and was like, you have to read this next. Here's the next one, and a lot of them were out of print. So it was like I would go to used bookstores and look for them. But one thing he constantly bugged me to read is Sherlock Holmes. And I was like, I'm not really into mysteries. And he finally convinced me to read Sherlock Holmes a couple years ago. And I was like, wow, this is actually really good. It's not like the traditional vein of what mysteries has become, like the who done it, and they're trying to trick you as the viewer. It was more about like, how does Sherlock Holmes cleverly solve an interesting problem? And you as the viewer or the reader are not supposed to figure it out. It's to show how clever Holmes is with his approaches, and how an impossible sounding mystery can actually be possible if you pay attention to enough details. So I think there's a lot of Ed in this story, looking for those details and hunting them down, because he was somebody that, like, if there was a problem to be solved for like a customer in the field or something like that, he would look into those little details and he would figure out how to invent a solution to solve that. So I dedicated this to Ed, and I say to Ed Barkin, who taught me to never cease being curious. So he's very missed. He's just a legend in his field, somebody that I was blessed to know. And I would say there's a lot of Ed in Ethelgard, and a lot of these stories. So if you want to get to know Ed a little bit, you could read some of this and see some of the stuff that he loved. So thank you, Ed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. 1,000 patents, the man. That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome life accomplishments. Seems like a great guy.
Yeah,
Seems
he had some incredible inventions when he was 18. He invented something called the magic planter. So it was actually it was one of the first capacitive touch circuits in the 70s, and it was a plant pot that, as you planted the plant in it, and it would grow the roots down to a capacitive touch circuit, and that would then integrate with the cap touch circuit. So if you touch the plant's leaf, it would turn the lamp on and off. And
okay.
this was like before capacitive touch was even like a thing, right? So you had that and a capacitive display around the same time, and it was like way ahead of its time. Just awesome stuff.
That is too cool. That is too cool.
Yep.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome to have in the house.
Yep.
So I'm curious. I do want to get back to your book and your writing style and stuff, but I'm very curious, when you're not writing and building these types of amazing worlds. What are you doing as like a hobby or like a routine that you like to do that kind of helps you recharge throughout the day?
Um, well, my day job is I'm an R&D concept engineer, so I invent new products and things like that. So that's what I spend 8 hours a day doing with Ed for many, many years. But then in my off time, I'm a volunteer firefighter. A few years back, I served as a fire chief, which kept me very busy, voluntary. So basically, just responding on alarms when my pager goes off, and dealing with fires and car accidents and all sorts of different emergencies. Um, so that's a big part of my life, doing a lot of that. I teach fire prevention to a lot of kids, and that's a big thing that I do. And then I don't know. In other things, I spend a lot of time. I have a 9-year-old son who's just an extremely talented kid and just a blast to hang out with. So I spend a lot of time hanging out with him these days, um, eh, doing different things. But I've been into I have a lot of different hobbies that I love. I love Lego, building things out of Lego. I
Mhm.
love archery. I started learning. I actually taught myself recurve bow because my character Actaeon shoots a recurve bow, which
Yeah.
you saw in there. So
Mhm.
when I first started playing him on the game, I was like, let me learn archery, and I did, and it's pretty awesome. Kayaking, hiking, getting in touch with nature and stuff like that. So,
So Ro is actually building a Lego as he's
oh, what are you
listening.
building? What are you
What are you
building?
building, Ro? And then, hey Tim, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, Tim. Hey.
Um, so my kid is so I have two boys, and they are getting to the age where we can actually do Legos.
Yep.
So we went through and built. I think the most recent thing was a big old Pokedex we went through and built, which was fun.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're working our way up. We're building a little bit.
Yep.
So those are always fun. It's fun, and it's a good bonding time to go through
Yep.
with the kids. So it's cool. So he said an old Pharaoh's Quest set.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nice.
I think I had one of those from when I was a kid. One of the was it Johnny Thunder? And then yeah, the 1701D, the Enterprise, we'll see if I feel like affording that. It depends on how many people buy my book. Maybe I'll buy
Mhm.
an Enterprise D. So,
and
um,
then and then the great E.L. Montague jumped on. I don't know if you're familiar with E.L. E.L. does his own narrations for his books as well.
oh,
He's a
awesome.
killer. He's a killer. So good. So good.
I'll have to
Um,
listen to some of those.
yeah, it's stuff's fun. Um, awesome. So building Legos and teaching yourself the recurve bow. That's too cool. That's on the list of stuff I would like to learn how to do. I just don't have the property to go through and shoot a bow without accidentally shooting over my fence and hitting the neighbor's dog or something. Is the part.
Got to be very careful. Yeah, if you
Mhm,
shoot on your own property, you got to make sure you're proper distances from structures, and you're not
mhm.
shooting towards anything that could be occupied.
Yeah, I'm kind of surrounded by that, so I kind of
Yeah.
can't do that right now. So maybe
There
in the
are
next,
archery ranges that you could go to. So if you look that up.
yeah, I don't know if they got that here. So I'm in a very close to a military town, so everything out here is um, ranges and shooting with
Yeah.
different rifles and stuff. I don't know. They might have something. We'll
Yeah,
see.
look it up.
I
Look it
might have
up.
to look it up. It might pester you for some archery advice. Would be fun.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
good.
I I do want to go back. So you mentioned something. I think you mentioned it during the live. If not, you mentioned it right before we got on about not having a lot of time to go through and write. You try to um,
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of time but to go through and write. But so I'm curious, what does your process look like? Are you I wake up super early in the morning? Are you I do everything late at night? Or are you one of those fancy people who can type out novels on their cell phone in the middle of the day? Because I've talked to a few people with that, and those are crazy people. So I'm curious if you're one of those too.
It depends. Like when I was writing the engineer, I was very limited on time because I had a newborn. My son was a
Mhm.
newborn. And there were times when I was baby wearing him and I was writing my book while I was baby wearing him. And, I'd get him to sleep and I'd keep writing my book while I was, waiting for him to fall asleep and things like that. So, you know, it's kind of like make do when you can. I find I'm better at really disconnecting from everything when the day is over.
Mhm.
All the stresses of the day are behind me. Then I could stay up a little late at night and write. Um, That said, I really don't have a lot of time to do it because if I stay up late at night now, I got to sleep in a little bit. So I usually do that on a weekend. And I usually can only fit in like once a week with everything going on and all the things I do, especially being a parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once a week, I find the time to sit down and write. Um, there's a group on Twitter, I think, called Turtle Writers that some of them post. It's like hashtag Turtle Writers. So like really slow writers, and they talk about like being encouraging, like you could write a book, just make sure you set the time aside and do it. And there's not a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people I speak to that are like, oh, you wrote a book. Uh, I'd love to write a book, but I don't have the time. And I always tell them it took me 3 years to write my first book. It took me 5 years to write my second book because I was a fire chief at the same time. And then the two short story collections, the one of which that you just read, Artifacts and Enigmas, took me another 3 years. So it's like a really long process for me, but part of it is just taking that time aside and every single week writing a little bit. And anyone could do it. You just have to be dedicated to it and try not to work on 5 projects at the same time. Concentrate on one and, do it once a week if that's all the time you have, and you will have a book eventually.
That's
It's
awesome.
just gonna take years.
Good motivation, and good calling out the turtle writers on Twitter. So go or X, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
the that place.
Tweeter.
Tweeter. I've never heard of turtle writers. I want to go through and check them out
Yep.
and try to motivate some people as a non-writer, but as a reader, it's always fun. I do want to talk a little bit about your book, and I'm really curious because many of the artifacts in the stories feel scientifically plausible. I don't want to get into too much detail. I want people to go through and jump into it, but I'm curious for you, how much of your real world engineering background informed you into the way you designed these inventions within your story?
Quite a bit. One of the things, Ed's favorite sci-fi author, Arthur C. Clarke, said was it was something to the extent of in order to find out what's possible, you need to go a little past the possible and tread into the impossible, something like that. So there's a little bit about that in what we do to invent, to find solutions, because some of the ideas you come up with aren't necessarily immediately possible, or it's not obvious how they could be possible, but you come up with them and you kind of have them in your head, and sometimes you can solve them, or sometimes they're just waiting for a new technology to come out that hasn't come out yet. And I've seen that even in my career, like the next thing comes out and it's like, oh, well, that solves the problem. We've been waiting for this to happen. And now the impossible becomes something that's real. So science fiction's kind of taken that to the next level. And I think a lot of the artifacts that I have in that world, especially the ones that are the tech artifacts that kind of cause the issues, are really, I guess, inspired by, obviously it's science fiction, right? So it doesn't exist yet. But I want to know the theories behind it. So for me as an engineer, I need to understand like at least the theoretical operation behind it, even if it's not scientifically doable yet. I want to know kind of how is it going to function, and what are the limitations of the technology, and what is happening. Or else, if I don't feel comfortable with that, I will not put it in the story. So I do research a lot. I don't want to say hard sci-fi or not. Let the readers determine that, because there's certainly things that are at the edge of the plausible, right? That I've come up with. But a lot of things are certainly within that realm that you could kind of think of what a future technology piece would be like, and actually do some research on it and find out that that's the case. Now that said, Actaeon is kind of the engineer, so he's like the point of view that you're seeing this technology through. And I have fun writing him because he's not always right. He's making a lot of assumptions, and he's trying to test things out to see if they, match his theories about his understanding of it. but oftentimes his assumptions are wrong, and I like writing some of those wrong assumptions in there because that's like a realistic thing. You even working as an engineer, sometimes you find your assumptions were not correct, and that's a good thing to kind of understand and even see the consequences of, right? Like I think there was one where he thought that there was going to be some interaction with probably something that was similar to a laser, right? I think Redemption's Maw in that short story.
Mhm.
Um, and something does not go the way he expects, and it's not good, right? So I like writing that. These are not flawless characters. They're going to make
Mhm.
mistakes. Eh,
Yeah, they're very logical, but very human at they all feel like real people. Like I can sit and like I know this person, which I really do enjoy when I can read a story and the characters do have those flaws,
mm,
or the opportunity to go through and learn something, and you get that within this story. But I'm really curious when it comes to writing characters who are that highly analytical but yet so deeply human. How do you go through and approach that? Because you're the brains behind it. You actually know what their story's going, but how do you write characters with those type of flaws and making those incorrect assumptions that you want within your characters?
I guess it's part of the experience, especially as working as an engineer. Like I just talked about Ed Barkin and how amazing Ed Barkin is.
Mhm,
He made a lot of mistakes and he learned from those mistakes, and that's like an important part of any creative process, I would say.
mhm,
So they're doing in Artifacts and Enigmas, Act and Eighth are, kind of in a dangerous situation, and they're trying to get themselves out of it in a lot of cases. So there's not a lot of opportunity to make mistakes, but they still do sometimes, um, and it gets them into a lot of trouble. But in real life, just people are making mistakes all the time and have to learn from it. And if you learn from your mistakes and you have the humility to realize that you are not a perfect individual, that you can constantly improve, I think that's something to be said, for anyone in any field becoming the best that they can be, right? And if you don't have that realization that you can make mistakes and explore that,
mhm.
I think it's really going to hinder your ability to become better at whatever you're trying to become better at. Um, now that said, I think it's kind of one of the lessons I would want to get across with the books that I write. Maybe one of the themes, if you will. I don't really write to themes, but I like to incorporate that into you know the search for truth of these characters. They're looking for truth, but they're going to make mistakes along the way. So be open to it. Be open to the fact that you could be wrong.
So I want to stick with this topic. So when you're going through and getting the ideas out there, I'm curious on your outline process. So there's a lot of people that say, there's a big, are you a pantser
Yeah.
or an outliner? Um, to me, I think I've had enough of these conversations. Everyone leans within the middle. It's just what one
Mhm.
side do you lean more than the other.
Yeah.
With how you write your stories, I'm really curious. What is your process for outlining?
There's a little bit of both. In there, but a lot more outlining for me.
Mhm,
That said, so I'll write a pretty good outline, but that said, it's kind of that uh, ability to refine your design, right? Whether it
mhm,
be an engineer or a writer, you could put an outline together. That outline really shouldn't be set in stone. If it's set in stone, you're not open to improving it. So, like as I'm writing and kind of doing a discovery writing process, starting with the beginning of the outline and going, I am open to the fact that as I'm writing, the characters are going to do things sometimes that I don't expect. I'm going to come up with some better ideas, and I better be open to revising that outline as I
mhm,
go, and really incorporating the best features from it. Um, so that's one thing. And then one of the weird things about it was, so I said I don't love the whodunits, but I did put a couple of whodunits in, right? The
mhm.
two-way murder was one of them, right?
Yep.
This murder happens that Actaeon determines is a murder, and it seems like maybe Lauren did it, but it could have been somebody else maybe, and there's a bit of a whodunit there That's a little more challenging to outline because you don't want it to seem contrived at the end. So you got to kind of understand what is going on in the beginning and see, what the outcome is going to be and make sure everything makes sense going through with a mystery, right? So the mysteries seem to require, from my 11 story experience, more outlining than most other genres do.
What do you think's the hardest part of writing specifically for you? Is it getting the first draft down? Is it the revising? Is it the um, finally saying, "Hey, I've completed the story where I want it to end"? Is like what part is do you think for you is the hardest part for writing?
Um, well, if you look at the whole thing, it's selling books, right? It's the marketing aspect. I uh, I don't like that. I don't like. I mean, I like coming on these types of things and talking to you about it. I think that's pretty awesome just to discuss what you're doing. But putting ads together and plugging yourself on social media, it's like, oh, do I have to do that? So I'm not good at that, right? I'm terrible at it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't look forward to it. Um, I would say the more difficult part is like the editing process, like going through doing the first second edits and really plugging away at that. That becomes more of like a tedious, detailed process.
Mhm.
Um, so it's certainly a little bit less enjoyable than like write, writing everything down um, but I mean, I wouldn't do it as kind of because I'm not doing it for a job, at least yet. So, you know, I need to enjoy every aspect of the process to some extent.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Right.
100%. So I want to lean into the story itself now. Again, non-spoilers for everyone that's watching. But I want to start with the high level and then go in a little bit more details with the story. So Artifacts and Enigmas, as you mentioned, is a collection of novella type stories within a full novel, and each of the stories is its own separate investigation. Each story is,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, self-contained, but they're all connected with
Yep.
a common thread, not only within the stories. And you said you're not a theme writer, but I felt there was a thematic and moral thread within the story as well.
Yep.
How but I want to lean into, how did you decide which cases to include within these stories, and how did you decide on what order would best work for the story?
Interesting. So I guess there's um, a lot of times the order of the cases wasn't super important, right? There were different technological things that I wanted to explore. Where like, hey, this technology could do a
Mhm.
weird thing to people, or it could create a situation that was very strange to deal with. Like Memory's Edge and Capsule are kind of like those strange situations, and then there's the Shackled Heart that there's kind of weird things going on with people. Um, Sapphire Crucible is another one of those. So I wanted to include all those, and I don't think the order was necessarily as important for some of those cases, but I did write them in like a chronology where they're progressing in the story in time, and I wanted to show the development of Aethelgard and Actaeon in these roles and their partnership together and that advance. So that was one important thing to me, is I wanted to show that um, them learning to work with each other and learning from each other at the same time. And I wanted to show that advancement. The cases actually take place over like the course of a decade,
Mhm.
believe it or not. So yeah, if you look at the years at the tops, it's about a decade of them working together
Mhm.
and working on these various cases. So really showing that progression of, well, what are they getting out of this working with each other? What does the engineer learn about investigating, and what does the investigator learn about engineering? And I think by the end, really wanted to show that, like how much did they get out of that? And then the other progression is Rune Lock. So
Mhm.
Rune Lock is kind of I so I was a big fan of MacGyver growing up. I don't know if anyone else here was, but um, MacGyver is, always get yourself out of a situation with a pocket knife and duct tape, right? And Actaeon's kind of like a medieval MacGyver. I always thought of him that way. So I wanted to have a villain that was kind of like Moriarty to it,
Mhm.
from Sherlock Holmes, but also a little bit like Murdoch from MacGyver. And for those of you that don't remember, Murdoch would always try to kill MacGyver in like this really flashy, difficult way, that was very convoluted or very complex. And he'd always give kind of MacGyver the chance to maybe finagle his way out of this impossible situation, almost like a James Bond strapped to the table and what is he going to do type situation, right?
Mhm.
So the Runelock stories, are kind of designed like that. That like those have to go in order because we're showing now, Runelock ends up being this kind of arch nemesis of Aethelgard that Actaeon ends up learning about and having to deal with, and then they have to work together to deal with Runelock constantly trying to, um, do bad things. So, but Runelock is kind of like if you read the original Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty was not like a character that you saw on the page. He was this like almost element in the background that was just terrifying, and the
Mhm.
characters were scared of him, and like Sherlock Holmes was terrified of Moriarty and didn't know anything about him, right, at first. And it was like, well, that's the guy that knows everything about everyone.
Mhm.
So how does he know about anything about Moriarty, right? So that was what made Moriarty so frightening. So I wanted to kind of take that with Runelock and bake that into him, right?
Mhm.
But also, I think there's 4 stories that involve that character, and I wanted to show that progression.
So I have a follow-up question. You mentioned the stories it wasn't the cases progression, it was the tech. So you started with the tech and then you built a case around the tech to be
Yeah.
able to progress the story. I'm curious, when it comes to the actual cases itself, were
Okay.
any of them adopted or maybe a premise of an idea taken from any other stories, or did you go through and say, hey, I'm creating all these from the top of my head?
Like were they thinking if they were inspired by specific stories?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but there were certainly concepts like in science fiction, like in science that were inspired by real life technology
Hmm.
and real life phenomena, right? In some cases. So there's one story that deals with, I'm not going to tell you which one, but it's, I mean, you probably could guess,
Hmm.
but there's one story that deals with kind of a real life phenomena that,
Hmm.
um, is a real biological thing. And that I saw that, it was like, okay, we can make a mystery out of that, right? So I was looking for different things like that. What could you do if you take something, this fascinating technical or natural concept, right? That at least seems a little alien, whether it be a natural concept or a tech concept, and then apply that to, well, if I take this, how do I create a weird crime or a mystery around it? So a lot of my brainstorming process revolved more around that than it evolved around like pulling influence from an existing story. Obviously, the Sherlock Holmes, tales of Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that, his case studies that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle writes. There's a lot of inspiration there for just how Aethelgard solves different crimes, and he's looking at, well, how are people walking and how
Hmm.
are people dressed, and what kind of scuff marks am I seeing around a crime scene? And he's just pulling all this information out of these little um, traces that were left behind, and he's reconstructing whole scenes in his head, right? So that's very Sherlock Holmes,
Hmm.
um, going on. So I would say, certainly pulling from that, but not with a specific story in mind.
I really liked the Aethelgard's and Astian's relationship within the story. There was a lot of respect between the two characters. They really used each other's strengths and they understood themselves enough. We're going, hey, this is not my wheelhouse. Let me grab this guy over here to
Yep.
help solve a specific problem. So I really love the dynamic between these two characters. What was the initial plan and idea to really build that emotional compelling relationship between these two individuals, but yet still seemed logical. Like, hey, they're at work, they're working together, but yet they still had that. I felt such a connection between them, and I'm just trying to understand what was your thought process with building these kind of connections between these two characters.
I wish I could say like I had this whole thing planned out with like how they got to know each other.
Yeah.
I I would say with that it was more like it just evolved naturally over the course of the novels. Looking back at it, I think it was certainly influenced with my connection with Ed and working with Ed for so long. I see a lot of that, us getting to know each other and really respecting each other's abilities and learning from one another as inspiring this and that relationship there. But yeah, it kind of evolved more organically. Like I wasn't sure how that would go, and kind of just let the characters show me how that's gonna unfold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting at points, right? Like in Shackled Heart, you see like lots of, you know, without giving any spoilers away, some difficulties there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
um, exploring those things was pretty interesting with the characters. But I'd say knowing the characters and what they would do in the different situations and how they would act and approach things and what their mindset was like helped really drive that. Because then I have like one known being Aethelgard and one known being Actaeon, and now I'm thrusting them into this weird case, and I don't know what they're going to do. So that's where, for me, that's like a discovery writing part of the process, because I
Mm-hmm.
might have it plotted out, like they have to do this next, and then they do something a little different than I expect, and I'm just letting that play out.
So staying at this point. So when they're just say debating, when they're going through and trying to decide how to move forward with this, are you as the writer finding yourself siding more with one character than the other as they try to hash out things within the story?
Uh, I I don't know. I guess part of that is, um, I mean, it's hard to say I don't side more with Actaeon given I played him as a character, right?
Mhm.
But at the same point, like when I was writing both of their arguments when they get into kind of philosophical discussions and debates about
Mm.
things, right? Which was a lot of fun to write that. Um, you could kind of see both sides of the argument,
Mhm.
and really understand it. And so when you write scenes like that, it's not really about. I think a lot of times when you have those kind of complex scenes, it does read through a lot that the author's like, I agree with this character and this one's wrong, so we're going to make him look stupid. Um, with writing those two characters, it's like, no, they could have vastly different viewpoints, and they don't have to. Neither of them is necessarily wrong. They might both be a little right. And there's a lot of times when you're creating things or you're debating things where finding out, how those two very different viewpoints mesh together can create really great things. And that's, I think, probably a natural theme that kind of emerged with listening to them talk, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
not really. I wasn't in there going, yeah, he's right, but he's wrong. But yeah, they have some interesting discussion.
No, it was so much fun with going through and getting the different perspectives from them. And yeah, without spoiling anything, it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed those types of conversations. Um, I want to lean back. You mentioned the ancients earlier, and I want to go back to them. And I really felt they were everywhere within the story,
Mm,
within the collection. I keep saying story, but it's a collection of stories.
yep.
Um, but they're never fully explained. Like you don't get the full history of the ancients. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you have a history that's mapped out privately, or do you prefer it to be a mystery of itself?
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery. Like, so the ancients, they were actually a mystery to me, even. I had the permission from the creators of the game to write these series. Um, and I kind of started going back into, logical assumptions from like how did this world get created and things like that. And I wanted to kind of keep um, the canon aspects of this world as well as I could, but also delve into, well, what is really the truth behind this world. And Dark Heart of Redemption is the sequel. It's a standalone sequel to The Engineer, and I really explore a lot of those issues more. So they get a little bit more information about maybe what happened, and it's a little vague, right? So a little bit more information in there. And then I said I wrote 2 short story collections. So I wrote the Artifacts and Enigmas, and the other one is going to be Tales from Redemption. So that will be when I feel like I want to edit that. I will get that out at some point, and that explores a lot of the history that goes on. So I do have that kind of fully baked, and understand what's going on with the history of the ancients. And I think you've seen in Artifacts and Enigmas the Starborn are mentioned a few times. So the Starborn have something to do with all that.
Awesome.
But it's very confusing. Like they talk about, are the Starborn some sort of gods, or what are they, right? And so there's a lot behind that, and getting to know some of that history, like what actually occurred with the ancients. So I actually have in Tales of Redemption, there's a few stories that have ancients in them, and you actually get to read about the ancients.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very intrigued, so I'm super excited to read more about the history behind it. But I also like the ambiguity. I like the stories of like, is this really what happened, or is this an urban legend of kind of what is happening? I
Right.
thoroughly enjoy that too, and kind of filling in the blanks. So I want to know exactly, but I kind of like it.
Yep.
Is this the real story kind of thing? I enjoy either way. I have a good old time.
That's one of the things I really enjoyed when I was writing The Engineer, and you see a little bit about that in Artifacts and Enigmas. There are a lot of different perspectives on like the artifact tech that's left behind. There are lore-sworn characters who want to take it and study it, and figure out how to use it for their advantage. And then there's the keepers, who I think we met Nathis, who's one of the keepers in one of the short stories. She wants to destroy it. She thinks it's evil, and she worships a god called the Allfather, who teaches them that technology destroyed the ancients, and it's going to destroy them if they don't destroy it themselves. So they are actually knights that are hunting down tech to destroy it. And in Engineer and Dark Heart of Redemption, Actaeon is butting heads with them a lot because he's studying the tech, right? So I don't like saying that any of them are wrong, right? Because it's interesting to see kind of that all these different perspectives on what's going on, and see how do they pan out. And one of the fun things in The Engineer was actually having Actaeon debate one of the Keeper Knights about whether to destroy the technology or not. And in a scene that there was no violence, but they're just, because there was a lot of violence with the Keepers, but to actually have them philosophically debate why they should destroy technology or not destroy technology. And Aethelgard, I think, does that a little bit too with Actaeon, right?
Yep. So I have one more question before we jump into what I like to call the lightning round, and we'll talk about what that is in just a second. For you, I'm curious because I have my perspective of the story, and I kind of went through and talked about that already before the live. But I'm curious for you, what do you want readers to feel when they go through and finish Artifacts and Enigmas?
Like at the finish?
At the finish, yeah. I'm done with the book. I close it. What are you hoping people feel?
I guess a bit of inspiration to be curious about the world around them and ask questions. And also a little bit of, I guess, emotionally, hopefulness, I think, even in the face of things seeming pretty down sometimes.
Right? Awesome. All right, so we are at the lightning round. This is when I'm going to go through and ask Darran. I have about nine questions here for Darran. These are top of the head, no thinking. First thing that comes to your mind to go through and answer. All right, okay. So you good? You ready?
So like I have like seconds to answer.
You have seconds to answer. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with an easy one for you first, and then we're going to work our way a little bit harder as we go our way down. When you're writing, do you drink coffee, tea, or something stronger?
Whiskey.
Whiskey.
Hold on. Writer's tears.
Nice. Nice.
for those sad scenes. I collect them.
What's one word that best describes artifacts and enigmas?
Curiosity.
What's the artifact you would most want to study in real life?
From the book.
From the book. Mm-hmm.
The artifact in, let me make sure I got it right. Capsule.
Okay. One.
Which that one, by the way, was an artifact who done it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As opposed to a person who done it.
What is you answer this one already. I'm going to take that one out.
All
right. You answer that one. What is an invention you're proud of that you created in real life?
That I actually built.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Do I have it here?
Uh-oh.
I think I have it here. Let's see if I could get it off. Sorry, I would have had this ready to go.
No, we're good. We're good.
Okay, so this is a cool one. A lot of mine, you could see, like I invented a lot of data capture devices, and they're in the field and stuff. But this is kind of my worlds colliding. This is a this is an actual prototype of a fire finder that mounts above your fire helmet, and it had on a display where the fire was, because a lot of people don't realize when you're fighting a fire in a house, there's zero visibility. The smoke is so thick down to the floor that you cannot see anything. So we invented this device out of very low cost thermal sensors, and it's got cameras looking in every direction in front of you. So it's like a bubble in front of you. And it was able to find exactly where the fire was. So you could go right there. And I actually got to bring this into a few fires and test this out. So that was a lot of fun.
That is too cool. So what happens when it finds the fire? So if it's on my helmet, what's it going to do? You're going to see like
So there's a row of LEDs, and if the temperatures are all cool, they're all green. And then if there's a fire in this direction, it'll turn red. And when you aim your head at it, it'll go to center.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then the cool thing was I brought it into a fire room, and everything's red, right? But I actually had the host team like hold off a second, and I did a sweep of the room, and I could see the door was green. So a big problem with firefighters is like if the room flashes over, you have like less than a minute to get out. You've got seconds to get out, even in your fire gear, or else you're gonna die. So knowing where the door is really important. So that was a fun thing with this.
Okay, that's too cool. That's too cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, my world's colliding a little bit.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. That's a good one. All right. I'm just going to have one more because that was honestly the best one. This one, I will give you time to go through and think. Okay. And I'll explain why I'm asking this question. I ask this to every single author that I interview. So if Artifacts and Enigmas had a theme song, what would it be?
I'm tempted to just say the MacGyver theme song.
If that's what you want to do, I'm good with that.
Yep.
All right. Is that
Let's go for it. Yeah, we'll go with the MacGyver theme song.
Awesome.
The original MacGyver, not. I don't know if the new one sounds anything similar to that.
All right. Perfect. All right. So why I go through and ask that question? Since I started doing interviews, I ask that question to every single author, and I've created a Spotify playlist for every single theme song that gets brought up during this conversation. I will add that the MacGyver theme song to that Spotify playlist, and I will have it in the description below, so you can go through and listen to every single theme song from every single author I've went through and interviewed. It is too much fun. It's too much fun because I think yours is the second theme song that made it onto the Spotify playlist. So we have, I think the Scrubs theme songs on there, and then also the Darth Vader Death March is on there too.
You should do an activity somewhere where people could go link the book with the theme song
Book with the
and see
theme
if they
song.
get it right.
It's it's pretty spot. I can, at least I don't know. For me, because I have a connection, because I've read every single book.
Right.
So it's like I know I see it and I hear it and I go, oh, that's this one. Oh, that's this one. And it's too much fun. It's so much fun. So yeah, I'll
Can't
add that
imagine what
on.
Scrubs is.
Yeah, it is a fun one. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Dave Lawson's book.
Okay.
So
It's a
he
comedy?
did And Voice of War. It's a grimdark comedy type of fantasy story. So much fun. It's so
Okay,
much fun.
cool.
The humor in it is spot on. But yeah, it's a grimdark type of story, but it's fun. A lot of comedy in it. So perfect. I'll have this on tonight. So you can go through and get the playlist, and everyone can go through and listen to the MacGyver theme song, definitely when you shuffle through. So that is Artifacts and Enigmas. So I appreciate, thank you so much for doing the lightning round. I find these so much fun and entertaining, at least for me. I have fun with them.
Yeah, so you had some good questions.
Thanks, man. So I have a few more questions for you, and I want to ask, I'm curious for this one. So if you had all the money in the world, okay, and you had all the power as Darran, you have the power, all the power to create a Artifacts and Enigmas. It could be one story, or if you want to do all the shorter novella stories into a different type of medium, what medium would you pick? Would it be a film? Would it be a series? Would it be a graphic novel or a video game? Is there other kind of a medium you would like to go through and do your stories in?
Well, this is kind of easy. It's really almost made for TV, right? But I'd want a good producer like Joe Malazzi, who wrote Dark Matter. If you've ever seen Dark Matter, and he was a Stargate writer, or Brad Wright, Travelers and Stargate too. So if you guys are interested in making this into a TV show,
we are what, 7 degrees away from Kevin Bacon, so we're 7 degrees from him, so we're right there. So we're just a few steps away. I think I mentioned this before I jump into my other question I have you thought about who would play your characters at all in your show? I find it, so I've done a weekly update review of this book, and every time I see the cover, I love the cover. I don't want you to think I'm ragging on the cover. I thoroughly love the cover, but the two characters on it look like the Breaking Bad characters. Every time I look at it, I see Walter White and Jesse Pinkman every time I look at it, and it makes me giggle. It makes me giggle. So that's who I see in my mind as playing the characters, just because I can't not see it. Who for you would you go through and have for just Aethelgard and Atheon?
There's a character, he was on Blacklist. The actor is Ryan Eggold, I think. So he plays.
Share your screen. Do you have it up?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it. So yeah, Ryan Eggold probably would be a really good Atheon. He's got kind of the eyes and the expressions for him. So I think he could pull that off really well. Yeah. And then Aethelgard's I haven't really put a lot of thought into Aethelgard. He's a little bit older. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll go with Walter White.
You're gonna go
Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston as Walter White. There we go.
Yeah,
there he is.
I think he could pull it off.
I 100% think he would kill it.
Yep.
Think he would kill it. There we go. All right.
He's the guy. He looks good in this role. He just has to grow that beard a little longer.
He could grow it out. He's done all kind of stuff. I think it's perfect. I feel like he's got it. He's got it. Perfect. Awesome. Good. All right. I'm gonna make it happen. I just want to see Bryan Cranston in that role.
So get those two producers and writers and get Get those 2 actors.
Yeah,
And
I'll call them this
we'll make
afternoon.
it.
We're all
We'll
good.
be executive producers, and
Yeah, and
we'll
just
make it come to life.
yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. I'm curious. So you mentioned you're making Tales of Redemption. Is Tales of Redemption, you said, based in the same world?
Mhm.
Is it set after Enigmas? Is it set before? Is it completely different characters? I'm sorry if you mentioned.
There
Um,
are stories and characters that span the entire series, and they span um, tens of thousands of years.
okay,
So that's all.
that's all.
It's not as much of a through line as Artifacts and Enigmas, but it's all connected to what is redemption and stuff like that. What are
Okay.
these characters doing? So there are Actaeon's in it from the engineer. Issandra's in it. Trench and Wave are both in it. Trench and Wave are mercenary characters from the my first novels. They're like fan favorites. They're kind of, they banter back and forth with each other, and people seem to really love them. And their Actaeon hires them to kind of protect him. And they're these old grizzled war veterans that are constantly like, verbally sparring with one another. But when the you know the poop hits the fan, they're banded together and they could fight like almost anyone off, right?
Mhm.
So Um, so I have short stories that follow them. I have short stories about the ancients. I've got short stories about Starborn. So really looking forward to sharing that with people.
Awesome. Is there any other work you're working on? Because you said when you have time to go through and edit that, which made me think
Right.
you
Yeah.
might be writing another story as well. Do you writing something else that you're
Yep. So
hoping about?
I started writing a novel about Wave, and it's really just about Wave. Um, and so I'm writing that, and I stopped writing that when Ed died because I wanted to write um, a follow-up novella. I'm saying it's a novella, but it might end up being a little longer, to Artifacts and Enigmas, because I just I guess with the loss of Ed, I kind of want to just jump into this world again. So
Mhm.
I've shifted gears to starting to write that. So I'm in chapter 1, really cranking that along, and I started outlining it a bit. So exploring um, another case.
Oh, I love it. Are you going to
So
continue with the structure of what you did for Artifacts and Enigmas, where it's investigations, shorter stories within a bigger novella? Is that something you kind of want to continue to do in the future? Because personally, as we talked about through this whole conversation and before, I
mm.
thoroughly love it. I'm just curious if you're planning on continuing that with maybe Tales of Redemption, maybe other future things.
So Tales of Redemption, I guess they're all kind of related, but there's not like a single through line
Mhm.
like Artifacts and
Yep.
Enigmas. And then the novella I have planned, it's really a single contained case in that novella. So it's going to be a bit longer, and revisiting Actaeon and Aethelgard's partnership with that. So I'm excited about that. I started writing the short stories basically because a lot of people are telling me, "Hey, I'm picking up. I really love the ideas in." I'm actually struggling to lift them. I love the ideas in these books, but they're huge. They're
Mhm.
like, each one is 225,000. These actually are exactly the same length in words. They're 225,000 words. I did not plan that. um, so it's a really hard thing to get into. I think people have less and less time these days, and they're like, I would love to immerse myself in this world, but it's difficult. So I had all these short story ideas for Tales of Redemption from writing those big novels that I wanted to explore in that world. And then I came up with the idea for the mysteries, and I was like, let me write all these short stories and put out some works where people could get familiar with my works and have something less intimidating to consume, right, as they're reading. And then maybe they'll get more into the novels as well. Um, so that said, these other 2 novels I'm working on, I'd like to keep them a little bit shorter. And then we'll see where that goes. But I did love this format where it was like kind of no pressure, like write an episodic story,
Mhm.
series, and just see where it goes, and put a little bit of a through line in there that's just enough satisfaction so that if you read it cover to cover, you feel that like, okay, I've taken a journey, right, by the end of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
fun. So I think if there's a lot of interest in that, I will probably see what I could do if there's something else I could do that with, because that was definitely a blast to write.
Hmm. Yeah, it was fun to go through and read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I want to give you the final thing to go through. If anyone's going through listening, either in the chat now or watching on the recap, and they're on the fence of jumping into Artifacts and Enigmas, I want to give you that final time to go through and pitch your story to these people on why they should go through and give your book a chance.
Okay, thanks. So if you like science, if you like mysteries and you like sci-fi, this is, I think, one of the few sci-fi mystery books that I've seen, and especially one that's kind of episodic, right? So you could read. There's 11 short stories in here, and they all read a little bit differently. You can read any of them that you want, and they're all kind of a satisfying contained story that you could go on an adventure with these two characters with and solve a tech mystery. It's not all, I would say some people might think Sherlock Holmes, they go, oh, they're just kind of sitting around looking for clues. There's a lot of situations where it's like they're put in a spot where they've got to act in like a moment or they're dead, right? So there's a lot of action sequences too. I kind of, when I'm writing, I end up just stumbling upon action sequences in my brain. I'm like, okay, I'm a little bored. Now there's going to be an action sequence, and you know, what if something really bad happened here and they almost died? So, like you saw, I think at the beginning of the Sapphire Crucible, they both almost burned to death, right?
Hmm.
And like, how do they get out of that situation? So they're in a lot of those situations in the book. So it's very exciting, tech mysteries as well as just interesting topics and things to explore. There's philosophy in it. There's there's some romance. There's friendships. There's all sorts of great things in there for everyone, I think. So if you're looking for a book for a mystery or a sci-fi lover or both for Christmas, go for it.
Perfect. Darran, um, I really appreciate you being on. I thoroughly enjoyed your book. I gushed about it before, and I want to mention, like, emphasize it during this live. If anyone's going through and watching, go through and check out this book. It will pull at your heartstrings. There's parts of this book that had me on the edge of my seats. I could not put the story down, and then there was a few scenes that punched me in the heart. And I talked with Darran about it prior to getting on because I don't want to spoil anything. But it was such a great story. I loved the characters. They felt so real. The world was well rounded, well thought out. So, Darran, I really do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to go through and read this fantastic story and being on today to go through and talk about it. And I am super excited to go through and see what's going to come next in your fantastic world that you're building for us. So, everyone in the chat, I'll have all of Darran's informations in the description below. Go through and check out his stuff, and appreciate everyone being on. Thank you so much for watching. Hope everyone has a fantastic evening, and make sure to stay overbooked. Have a fantastic night, everyone. Thank you very much.